Kenny Cunningham, a very good morning to you.
Morning on.
How are you?
All good, all good.
You're still not the Euro Millions winner?
Oh.
Or at least I think so. You haven't mentioned anything about it.
Yeah. I never get that kind of bit of a jealous jolt in my body when I hear that news. Good luck to him, but I would have been so much happy. Or her, yeah, but it would have been so much. I was hoping it was going to be a syndicate. This broke last night. Joe was getting very excited at the prospect of someone winning £150 million. But for me, it's like, potentially like disastrous for any one individual. That type of money, I'd love to see it spread evenly, like a syndicate of about 10, spread around the country. Donegal, down in your native Kerry, Cork, that money spread all around the country for me would be absolutely fantastic. But I can't even go there. 170 million euros. We could afford that property in Kerry we were talking about. That little,
down in Kenmare, yeah, we were going to buy a house.
The house share we were talking about. Why don't we forget about the house share?
Yeah, we can each buy a house ourselves. The thing about it, Kenny, is you're the exact type of person who would win €175 million and tell nobody about it. You would still come in and talk football with us every morning.
Oh, I'm a very private person, as you well know. I only tell people what they need to know. No, I can't even get me head around that, to be honest with you. I wouldn't even know where I'd start. Easy to say, like, it wouldn't change me. Some people might say, what's the point? What a waste. Like, if 150 million is going to change your life, what's the point? But I don't know. There'd be a little bit of trepidation there when that cheque hit the mat, came through the letterbox. I'd have to admit, I might have to phone you for a bit of advice on how to spend it. I'm sure you could recommend a few European destinations for me to...
100%, we'll go on a road trip.
I know you're a well-travelled man.
We did want to talk a little bit about high standards. I think that's a smooth enough segue this morning because there's some interesting quotes about Roy Keane from Andy Reid yesterday on TalkSport, and also this idea of Johnny May talking about comparing this England team to the great Chelsea side previously, because John Terry's been in with the rugby team and he's been giving them a few talks, and he sees a few comparisons because of the leadership core in this English rugby team and the standards that they're bringing in training. And Andy Reid was talking about kind of a similar enough thing about Roy Keane yesterday, saying that he's demanding, and sometimes people who get intimidated by that, they need to have a look at their own personality, which I guess, coming from your perspective, is something that you probably agree with in terms of high standards in training.
Yeah, generally speaking, I think that's fair. But I'd have to say I didn't experience that throughout my career. When I played, even from my own point of view, especially when you get maybe a little bit older, you'd have to kind of manage yourself a little bit. And maybe the last few years of my club career, I found in terms of training, I probably wouldn't have trained with the same intensity that I did when I was a little bit younger. You get to know your body a little bit more, so you almost have to manage yourself a little bit on during the course. And I wouldn't say I would have got a reputation, but there would have been occasions during training where you just get up and obviously prepare yourself for training to go, but very quickly during training, you think, look, I'm not physically, I don't quite feel I can really push myself where I need to be. So you almost drop down again, manage yourself, and there'll be a little bit of lads, maybe a little bit of derision from the players. Any chance? Bloody hell, boom, boom, boom. But so for me, I wouldn't be ultra critical in that respect. I think there's certain players maybe have to manage themselves a little bit more. But I think the general principle in terms of, commit yourself to your training and the intensity levels have to be right, I think is fair. But I think that's, generally speaking, that would be broadly how most players, kind of professionals, no matter what kind of sport you're in, would approach their training. So, I don't know, Reedy mentions Roy, I think. I mean, I would have only experienced Roy. At Sunderland, certainly the year I was there, certainly there would have been that, well, let's train well. Yeah. But generally speaking, that would have been the remit at whatever club you would have been at.
Yeah, he says Roy's demanding, he demands high standards, and you need to be mentally strong to work with him. I don't see any problem in that. People say you can't treat players like that anymore, but I don't see that. Can you not demand high standards? You can, day in, day out. Pass the ball properly. If there is a 10-yard pass, do it properly. If there is a tackle to be made, do it properly. I don't see anything wrong with that. If people can't deal with that, they need to work on their personalities. And he talks about being in 2 or 3 squads when Martin took over, and it's a different dynamic for Roy not being the manager. I kind of agree with him. Like there is nothing wrong with that.
I wouldn't agree totally. I understand where Reedy's coming from. He's talking, well, to some extent, I'd say from a bygone age, an age which is actually gone. Or from a coaching.
There you are, being Roy Keane's captain.
See, he's not screaming at me. Yeah, I'm looking at right, here we go again. But No, but I think you have to be a chameleon. You have to change your approach. If I think Andy's talking about maybe as a coach, as a manager, you have to take a different type of approach. If that approach isn't working with players, that kind of a little bit more aggressive, demanding approach to your players, which back in the day was pretty much accepted by players, and you know that maybe they weren't as flaky, potentially some people might say, as players today. But you have to modify your approach. It's not good enough saying, "Oh, you got to be able to take it." If players are switching off, they won't accept it. You know, you have managers nowadays and coaches will tell you that they've had to change their approach in terms of dealing with players.
So was there like an intense training session going on at that point, and you two boys are just sitting it out? Leadership and training.
This is what I'm talking about. You get to a certain. I've got like almost a defensive pose on there. I've got my knees up against my chest as if Roy's going to physically attack me, maybe sling a ball in my direction, but.
Well, like it's a body language expert would have a field day with that picture. Like, are you intimidated by Roy there?
What would be your take on that?
That you're a little bit guarded. That Roy is about to glare at you, about to tell you off.
Well, why wouldn't he be? He looks a lot more calmer there, Roy. Roy, best player in the world. Why not? I've never seen that photo actually. It's not a bad little photo, is it?
It's from April '97.
97, is that right? Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. I'd cut a little bit. Some managers would, demand. People talk about that you have to demand certain levels in terms of intensity, quality has to be up there. But that wasn't always the case, and I saw it with other players as well in terms of not particularly good trainers. You'd almost say going through the motions. In today's game, would be unacceptable in terms of how they approached their training. But come Saturday, when it mattered, the switch would go on, and you'd get that level of performance. And some managers actually accepted that from players, and other players would have accepted it because they understood when it really mattered, come game time, they'd be on their game. So there would be some players, there would be that type of drop off. But the mentality's changed.
As a player, as a teammate of that player, is it a bit harder to accept? I guess from a manager's perspective, it's fine for them, but you're putting in dog's work, and they potentially are getting away with a little bit more.
No, I must admit, I understand what you're saying, but it was accepted. This is the point that I'm making. I saw it as a young pro myself, older pros when I first came into the game. Maybe that little bit of drop off, that lack of intensity, just kind of, feeling their way through sessions. And no, they weren't criticised for. I never remember looking at these players and thinking that's an absolute disgrace. I'm doing more running than him. It was just accepted, so long as when it mattered, come the game of the weekend, they kind of stepped up and put up a performance in. And that might be considered kind of old school mentality, and it probably was. Whereas today it's a lot different. The game has changed. It's kind of moved on to an extent. People talk about raising the bar, the small percentage gain, the margins, and which is a good thing, generally speaking. So that part of the game maybe has changed significantly, and for the better, I'd have to say, generally. But yeah, it's an interesting concept, but it's an easy thing to say in terms of demanding from players, and even other players, even older pros, only accepting a certain level of performance intensity to the training. But still, you speak to coaches nowadays win the game, they talk about players, how careful, how sensitive they can be to criticism, even in terms of how you speak to people, in terms of the tone of your language, and that's all part of coaching, good management, people skills, and you have to modify your approach. Now, I know what Andy's saying, my way or the highway, but if that's the case, you're going to be on the highway. You're going to leave your job because the players aren't going to accept you. They're going to switch off, and ultimately that's going to cost you your job. So what are you going to? You're going to keep repeating that every club that you go to with the same end result. Invariably, they're going to be shown the door because you're going to lose the confidence of the players, or you're going to have to modify and tailor your approach a little bit. As much as it kind of galls you a little bit inside, it goes against all your natural instincts, and I understand what Andy's saying, but you have to do it. You have to kind of modify your approach in the modern game.
Yeah, for sure. It certainly seems that way. And we're going to stick with sporting psychology and attitude for the time being because, as I say, we're speaking to Will Fleury a little bit later on, and he is fighting on the Bellator card at the 3 Arena this weekend, which is, of course, on Sky Sports. It's on Saturday night, and in his last outing, he lost his undefeated record in pretty brutal style, and he spoke to us about the fine line between confidence and arrogance. We just want to play this clip. You're telling us how you're going to beat him. For people who might have missed that fight in Rome last year, tell us what happened.
I got knocked out in the first round, basically. I felt like my preparation had been very good, but I do feel like I let myself down on the night, just with my attitude.
How so?
I kind of felt like I was entitled to win that fight. You know, I did. I looked at him, I saw his skill set. I was thinking, like, I'm a way better martial artist than this guy. And this is just like a celebration of how good a martial artist I am. So, look, the game doesn't work like that and life doesn't work like that. You get out there and you take every opportunity that comes your way. I didn't feel vicious on the night. I didn't feel that fear, that kind of switched on, you know, primal instinct to just get rid of the guy. I grew up watching Munster Rugby and, you know, I kind of love that attitude of, like, it's just the honesty of your effort and the honesty of, like, you going out there and putting it all on the line, and that's what's going to get you over there. But there is a psychology within just being like, no, I'm better. I'm actually better than you, and I can do things better than you can, and I'm training in a better environment than you are. And, you know, just what I do, you won't be able to match. There's a positivity within that, but there is, like you said, there's like, when does it become an entitlement?
Yeah, that full interview is coming your way a little bit later on. And Kenny, there is that fine line, particularly in combat sports, between a necessary arrogance and an unnecessary entitlement. I'm not sure if there's anything you can relate to there yourself.
No. Well, I don't think so. We talk about constantly about crossover in terms of sports. I mean, obviously, individual sport as opposed to team sport for me is always difficult. And you hear the comparison we spoke about just earlier before we came on air in terms of rugby in particular, football, and even the GA in particular. So there's reasonable comparisons there you can make in terms of the team environment. But the mixed martial arts, like, made very interesting in terms of what he was saying. I would imagine that mentality that he's speaking about in terms of, I'm better than you, this kind of confidence, not kind of overconfidence. I would think that it's no bad thing as long as it kind of doesn't deviate your focus. You know, that doesn't channel off into kind of an arrogance. You know what I mean? And in terms of and you kind of lose your focus because of it. Then obviously it can become a little bit of a danger. I think maybe that's what he was alluding to. But in that particular type of sport, absolutely kind of brutal to some extent, as skilled as it is. I would think that kind of mentality in terms of, I'm backing myself here, I'm prepared, I'm confident, I've had my chances, I'm better for you for the reasons that were mentioned there. That can't be any. I think you almost need that. There can't be any kind of self-doubt of any sort, you know what I mean, in that particular sport. I wouldn't have thought.
I would have thought it would be the same for every sport. If you've actually got that sort of complex that you can actually achieve something that will help you defeat your opponents, that can only be a positive thing. I'm not sure. Like, you obviously have to keep humility.
But that's the point, isn't it? As long as if you can take a step away from that, and in terms of how you execute what you need to do, whether it's mixed martial arts or say individual sport, whatever it is, you don't let that kind of confidence, that overconfidence, I say, kind of consume you. And you kind of forget about the process involved in actually going out and doing what you need to do during the course of the fight or whatever it is. Now, in team sport, for me, it's different because, in a funny way, team sport is kind of hiding places. It gives you kind of hiding places playing with a team. Because I know, obviously, when your performances drop off, individual performance during the course of the game, you're bailed out. The other players can kind of bail you out. You can get off the hook. And I remember, particularly in the early part of my career, not having a huge amount of kind of self-confidence. That was, looking back, I didn't think about it at the time, but that probably was a problem for me in the early part of my career. And I probably fought with not even the early part, for a large part in my career, in terms of a little bit of self-doubt, low confidence. And I didn't think it was a bad thing on. Because for me, it really kind of heightened my senses going into games in terms of focus has to be right, decision making, concentration levels have to be spot on. Because if not, I'm really going to get exposed here. Whether it was coming up against a tricky winger, good pace, good technical ability, and I knew I'd be in trouble if I wasn't really at it. So that kind of fear element that I know actually I'm not as good as this fella, but I'm really going to have to be switched on in terms of being able to cope with this. So that helped me to a certain extent. But in some respects, maybe it held me back a little bit as well.
As in, you thought that perhaps I'm not good enough to play at this level?
Yeah. I think maybe a little bit of that subconsciously. Like I said, I didn't overanalyze myself for a large part of my career. Psychology came in towards the tail end of my career. But I never really sat down in a 1v1 situation. I like the kind of group dynamic on occasion, sit down with the group and invariably maybe having a conversation if there was a psychologist, whoever it was in the room. But yeah, 1-to-1, I never took the opportunity to speak to any psychologist 1v1. Just kind of kept me kept me distant. So yeah, no, like I said, don't overanalyze, but maybe looking back, maybe think, well, why not? Why didn't you dip your toe in the water? Maybe have these kind of conversations. So other lads do it very privately, and it kind of did help them in terms of a little bit of kind of self-esteem, change their perception a little bit of themselves, and all that type of thing. And I did see it benefit other players, but I don't know, it was a strange one. I just kind of I kept me distance myself. So yeah, maybe didn't help myself in some respects, but I'd still say that kind of fear factor which I had, and maybe a little bit of low confidence at times, it helped me in another respect as well.
Like, if you could turn back the clocks and you had to speak to a sports psychologist, what would you say to them about self-esteem and your confidence?
No, I don't think it's enough in terms of what I'd say, but just in terms of being a little bit more open-minded and listen to people. What they had, maybe they would throw certain things at you. Well, think about this, think about that. Just somebody coming from a different kind of perspective, you know, and maybe just testing you a little, making you think about things a little bit more. So I look back and I think, well, maybe could have benefited, maybe it didn't. Maybe I was a little bit closed off to that type of thinking.
And did that change over a period of time?
No, it didn't. It didn't really. No, like I said, I never went down that particular road. I kind of analysed my game but on a technical level, in terms of, right, what did I do today? How did I defend well? 1v1, defend me back post in possession, what I could have done better. But in terms of the actual mindset, how I prepared myself, which you hear a lot about now in team sports, football, even the rugby in particular, you mentioned there, the England team, Johnny May talking about the mindset, the players, the individual mind, and you can even the GA lads. I listen to the GA lads talk, and you can tell that's a big part of it. You know what's going on between the ears of individual players, and the responsibility they're taking to make sure they're in the right place. And apart from all their physical condition, the sports science side of things, just in terms of mentally being in the right place, and how positively they talk about themselves, like, as well, which is a good thing. I never had that. I mean, I was very much talking it down. That's even being a little bit self-critical, you know, that type of thing. You talk yourself down.
How severe would that have been? Like, 'cause some people can be very, very, very tough on themselves, and ultimately that just chips away the confidence a bit more.
Yeah, maybe subconsciously it does. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, but I never really went there. In all honesty, I literally parked that for pretty much all of my career. So I don't look. It's gone now. My career's gone. But it is interesting. I'm very interested when people hear players in different sports, individual or team, just there as well. People talking about the subject. It is very interesting, and obviously individual players gain great benefit from going down that particular road, and it is a significant. I think it can be overplayed in terms of the psychological preparation. People say it's everything going down the tunnel and games are won and lost. I think it can be overplayed, but I think it is still a significant factor in terms of your preparation.
Yeah, of course it is.